The 2023 Georgia Workshop, Jim Carella, Beginner to Advanced Pickleball Progression.
Former USPTA Georgia Pro of the Year, Net Generation Coach. He's also the TPA Sugarloaf Pickleball Director. And he also gives back to the community by being the Development Director for Habitat for Humanity in Hall County. So Jim Carella, take it away.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm glad you could make it. It's a perfect day to be inside, especially with the rain. Lots of tennis pros will hibernate indoors, so this is perfect. My segment is on pickleball progressions and drills, right? I think one of the things that I hear from a lot of pros is that I can give a few lessons to somebody and they start playing adequately and then I lose them, where a tennis player will take forever. I know Pat's got a spot with a person that's been taken for 15, 20 years. That's their time. So tennis is a lot more technical than pickleball, but there's a lot of things you can do to retain those lessons. And a lot of them is based on the progressions and the drills that you present. So we're going to do 3 segments. We're going to do a basic segment, an intermediate segment, and an advanced segment or a competitive segment. I will email you all of this information, so if you're diligently taking notes, you don't have to, which I don't see anybody doing, which is fine. I will email you this document so you'll have it, okay? First, what I usually do is introduce the people, just like I do for tennis, to the paddle and ball and the shake hands grip. What I need is 8 volunteers to come out for now. I've got the paddles here. Who would like to come out and volunteer? We got 8, I need 8 players, so I got your paddles right here. Here's 1 for you, 1 for you, 1 for you. I only have 3, here we go, 4. All right, I got 4 more spots. Doug, oh, thank you very much for helping. Thank you, sir. 2 more spots, anybody for pickleball? Don't be shy. 1 more player. Oh, thanks, Nick. All right. So just like a red dot ball player, if this is a basic group of players and they're really new to the game or new to pickleball or new to any type of sports, it's going to be about just holding the rack, the paddle, and then bouncing the ball. So each of you grab 1 ball from the basket. Let's go ahead and we'll work on our ups, which is just like this. So we'll demonstrate. Let's do some ups. So go ahead and do a few. All right, that's good. Hold your balls, please. Thank you. Now let's going to do what we call the flippy-do, where we flip the paddle back and forth. And that's good. And remember, this is just for basic players. Okay, hold your ball. Thank you. And now the next one is to learn the bounce, because if you're a tennis player, you're used to the ball bouncing high, and in pickleball it doesn't bounce because it's a plastic wiffle ball. So I'll demonstrate. This one is going to be where you have to go down to meet the ball because the bounce is low. So let's go ahead and do that one. You'll find that you're going to have to go down to meet the ball. All right, that's good enough. Hold the ball. Now, a couple of things I like to do when I'm doing my lessons is explain it, demonstrate it, and then have it imitated. So, I don't know, whatever method you guys do, whether it's tennis or pickleball, you're going to explain the drill, you're going to demonstrate it for your students, and then have your students imitate it. The other thing about philosophy for coaching is make sure it's a safe, fun environment for your students, right? Leave your ego at the door. Most of the time when I do these drills, I put a pop-up up so that they can win the last point, much like when you're a tennis pro and you feed that nice high juicy volley and they hit the winner and they go away feeling really good about themselves. So I always want my students to leave feeling good. It's difficult at first because we're such a competitive group. All right, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do, at this point I might go over a little bit of the basics, the lines and so forth. You can judge that based on how you feel your students are doing. If they know how to play, then maybe you don't go over that as much, but it's more detailed on the sideline. Definitely want to talk about the non-volley zone and the non-volley line, which is this line right here, right? Non-volley line. Now, some people may call it the kitchen. That's fine, but we're going to call it the non-volley zone and the non-volley line. We'll talk about not being able to step inside to take the ball out of the air. It's got to bounce. Okay? To accomplish that, you're going to have to do dinks. And that's a little bit different than you would do in tennis. We would probably, in tennis, call that a drop shot, right? That's a drop shot. But in pickleball, it's a drop shot after a drop shot after a drop shot, which is not something you would do unless you're just clowning around out there on the tennis court. All right. Levan, is that it? Would you go on that side? So Levan and I are going to demonstrate. We're going to do a few dinks, so stay right there. And your job is to make the ball bounce inside the kitchen, right? And so he's a little more advanced than most players, but this would be a challenge for your students if they're really basic players. Don't forget what you're going to see are some amazing athletes out here making the drills look real easy, but they're not going to be that easy for beginner players. All right, so we're going to set everybody out on their court. So we're going to have 4 players here and 4 players there. Grab a ball, if you would, and we're going to start dinking. We're going to do our dinks, and then I'll have you guys stop and we'll talk about it in a minute. Everyone has a ball? All right, go ahead and begin with the dinking. So at this point, I probably would be walking around making sure that everyone's doing it correctly. Not so concerned about technique at this point, just about accomplishing the dink. All right, hold your ball, students. Thank you. Now, to accomplish this, we would talk about the grip pressure. How tight are you holding it? Remember, tennis is a little bit different. The ball has a lot more mass to it, so you've got to be a little stronger with your grip. To do a dink, if you have a 10 as your firmest grip and a 1 as your loosest, it's probably a 2, just nice and soft, loose. And at this point, I would also talk about paddle position. Where is your paddle? Now, since this is a dink to a dink, most of the balls are going to stay low. So it's okay to keep your paddle down low because we're not attacking one another yet. It's right here. But if I hit the ball high, you've got to be ready for that eventually. So we're going to talk about paddle position. We talk about it just like you would as a tennis pro. If you're playing the net, you want to have your racket up high because the net is going to protect the bottom part of your body. Here, the net's going to protect the bottom part of your body because if I try to speed it up low, oops, I'm supposed to hit that in the net, then it's going to go in the net. So if I'm making the ball come over, I want to have my paddle up and then drop it. So I immediately bring it back up. All right, why don't you guys try that dink again, and thank you. Do your dinks again, but make sure your paddles come back up. So dink it and bring it back up. All right, go ahead. So here's where I would walk around making sure that the paddle position is up high. All right, that's good. Thank you, students. Now, to make it a little more competitive, because everyone likes to compete, we're going to have a goal, and the goal is going to be 6 in a row. So this is what we would try to do. We would try to do 1, and count them out with me. 2, 3, 4, 5. And at this point now you can try to win the point either by speeding it up or moving the person over out of their zone, right? Making it more difficult. And then you speed it up. Okay, so let's go ahead and now you're going to accomplish 6 nice dinks. And then after 6, you can go ahead and win the point. Go ahead. 2, count it out. 3, 4, 6. Now here you go. Ready? Now try to win. Oh, that looked like a pretty good flick right there. Nice, Michael. Here you go.
I've played this game.
Yes, you have. All right, students, hold your pickleball. Thank you. So I always say, and somebody I work with always says, read the room. So if they're struggling getting to 6, make your goal 4. If they're having high success and 6 is easy, let's make it 10. So you can elevate that cooperation. So this drill has cooperation and competitiveness all in the same time. If you make it just not competitive, people get bored with it because they want to play. They want to play fast. So now we would up it to 10. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we start seeing if we can win the point. We move it around, speed it up, maybe go back to a dink. I doubt if your students at this point would be able to do all that, but if you get a high ball, you can speed it up. All right, now, since we're doing dinks straight ahead, I would probably talk about the distance between one player and the other, which is 14 feet. The kitchen is 7 feet and 7 feet, so you're only 14 feet apart. If you elevate your dink at all, you're going to go ahead, you can hit me with this one. You can go ahead and get smashed very easily with that. So what I like to tell my students is the angle dink is really the way to go. You want to go softer, and if you go soft, the angle is the way to do it. I took a tape measure out because I did not believe it. I had to do it 3 times. The guys at Sugarloaf will tell you this. I took a tape measure from this corner to that corner just to judge how far it was. It's 24 feet, 10 feet longer. So this way, when you elevate your dink, it's hard to attack it, It's hard to attack it, right? Because it gets to travel farther. And it's a much easier dink. You're doing perfect. It's a much easier dink. So we're going to work on the angle dinks. All right? So here we go with our angle. Oh, go ahead. A little softer. All right, everybody go ahead and try the angle dinks now. All right, students, hold up. And at this point, obviously, during your drills, if you have 1 court or 2 courts, you'd be rotating the players around. So I would be rotating around. You may end up with the same partner, but you're going to work on, you're a lefty? So it would be backhand to forehand, but if let's say you're right-handed, it would be backhand to backhand, forehand to forehand. So now you work on that one as well. Next, I would get into the volley, okay? Because you notice once we sped up, all of a sudden we had to learn the volley. And the block volley is the key, keeping that paddle out in front. And that's when we have our ready position. And I always talk about the clock, right? If you're a tennis player and you're right-handed, your racket's usually at 11 o'clock. Same for pickleball, except when you know you're about to get attacked. I go to the defensive block, which is a 9 o'clock, right? And Mr. Lefty would be the opposite way around. So we're going to do our volleys. We're going to work on just blocking the volley. Yep, nice and easy, back and forth to one another. And trying to get 6 in a row. This is going to be much more challenging for your students. This is when they're going to go, wow, I really do need to work a little bit more on my volley. So go ahead and let's do 6 in a row cooperatively. Thanks. Cooperatively. Straight ahead. Straight ahead. All right. Hold your balls. Hold your balls. Now, at this point, I would introduce ground strokes. Now, obviously, I'm condensing all of this into a 20-minute segment. This is stuff that I would probably do 2 drills, maybe 3 drills at the most, and then leave 20 minutes for play or 15 minutes for play, because everyone wants to play. And I want my students to have fun, and when they start competing, that's when it gets fun. So now we're going to work on ground strokes, which is really something that's enlightening because you don't get the bounce. So it would be a straight ahead ground stroke, and here's where your tennis swing could come into play. So if you got tennis players, they can use their strokes, their tennis strokes, whether it's one-handed backhand or two-handed backhands. You know, they can work on their strokes just like you do in tennis. Same thing. Cooperation for 6, try to win the point. Here's where I would encourage them to go forward, though, so start making the transition. Okay? It would be straight ahead, then diagonal, and then we do point play. Make sure you have time to play at the end. Do you guys have any questions about basic pickleball drills? I want this to be interactive, so anybody with any? On the grip, that's a good one. Excellent. There's a pro player on tour that plays with his fingers up, so it just gives you more control. I get that question. I want them to feel comfortable with the grip. It's not as critical as tennis, where you want to start off with either an Eastern forehand, semi-Western, very traditional continental, which is what I still play with, continental. So I think for pickleball, you can vary it. Whatever they come to you with, unless they've got some really weird-looking grip, you may want to change it a bit, but just anything that feels comfortable. That's a good question, Michael, because I get people that are like that. Yeah, that's a good question. The biggest injury, speaking of injuries, for pickleball, that's one of the things that's exploding because you get a lot of non-athletic players that are just introduced to the game. And they're younger players, obviously, playing, but a lot of seniors are jumping into it. We'll be doing the side shuffle. A couple of things, trying to prevent the step over. That's one of the things I really discourage a lot. Especially if you're a tennis player, you're going to get people that want to step over. It twists your feet up, and it's not very effective in pickleball. Because if I take a step over, Lee Van puts it here, I have no time at all to get back. So I've got to keep my hips and shoulders facing. So I'll do some of these slides. I also do not permit my senior players from going backwards. If it's over your head, you just say, good shot. Do not try to run back for the ball. You should be able to play everything out of the air. I don't want to see people backing up for those overheads either. So I pretty much discourage that as much as possible to help for injuries. Yes? You know, whatever comes natural to them, I'm just pretty much wanting them to make good contact and be a neutral ball. So maybe flatter, not really worry about the spin. That comes in the next segment or two where we talk about a little more aggressive, top spinning the ball, where you start to get spin on or back spin with your slices, with your dinks, One question I always get is, why does my ball pop up? That's the most asked question for me as an instructor. I don't know about you all, but why does my ball pop up? Well, I always say the paddle face never lies. So you must have had your paddle face open. And to prevent that, it's footwork and focus. I don't know if you notice how small the pickleball paddle is, but the sweet spot on that sucker is right there. If you hit on the end, it doesn't go over. If you hit the graphite in a tennis racket, a lot of times goes great. Miss hit winner, sorry. In pickleball, that rarely happens where you're off center. So footwork and focus, so that if I'm just reaching for balls, go ahead and move me a little bit. If I'm reaching for balls like this, I'm going to pop that ball up and just get killed. So I want to make sure that if I'm to keep my paddle face under control, I'm moving side to side, so I'm behind the ball rather than just reaching for the ball. That will help you not pop the ball up as much. All right. I want to do intermediate next. So you guys just stay here. All right. Now at this point in the intermediate, I would start to talk about dinking and why we dink. Not because it's fashionable, not because they talk about it on YouTube videos. There's 3 reasons to dink, right? One is to slow the game down. The other is to open up space. And the third reason is to create a pop-up. That's the most enjoyable one. So if we're dinking and you put me under stress and I pop the ball up, then I'm going to get killed. If we're doing it in doubles, Armando, ready for this one? And I move it over and Levan doesn't cover the middle, I'm going to exploit that. And the last one is, if the game is going super fast and you just want, go ahead and speed one up at me. Hit it fast. And I just want to slow it down. Wow. Wish I could do that one all the time. So all of a sudden, I want to slow the game down. That will help against those harder hitters or the bangers. Because once that ball gets low, it's difficult to attack. right? All right, so we're going to go ahead and do these dinks, but I want you to be more aggressive with your dinks. So everybody back up on the non-volley line. Up on the non-volley line. See if you can move your partner side to side. So there's no cooperation now. It's a little more competitive. Go ahead and start. And again, read the room. I would spend a couple minutes on this and change it if things don't look like they're going well. I love it. All right, hold those pickleballs. Thank you. Now we're going to go back to our angle dinks. And as soon as we do this one, we're going to play, after this, we're going to play a game called pickle. Most of you know it as dingle on the tennis court. 2 balls go into 1. This is called the pickle. I just changed the name of it because I figured it was more appropriate. So we're going to go cross-court dinks. So you guys got a ball, we got a ball. So we're going to work on our angle dinks again. Stay aggressive with them if you can. Stay aggressive if you can with them. Work on your slice now, maybe. Try to add spin. Go ahead, you can take my spot, Michael. I failed miserably on that one. Go ahead, guys. Do some angle dinks again. All right, hold your balls. Thank you. Now, all of these skills are very critical, and the way I try to trick my students into practicing them is by adding some type of competitive game with it. And this one is called dingles. So what we're going to do is we're going to play 2 balls at once on the angle. Whoever misses first, whatever pair misses first, you yell pickle. And then make sure that we close the gap because we're going to be far apart. Then we want to close in and play 1 ball to win. So in the beginning, this is all cooperative. We're going to see if we can out-rally them, Armando. Here we go. 1. All right, if this takes too long, I'm going to go pickle. And then we're going to close the gap and play the point out. And usually you play to 5. So let's go ahead and do your pickle game. Angle, cooperating, and then as soon as one pair misses, it's all 1 ball to try to win.
Just the second one or the first one? Just the second one?
Yeah, just the second one. All right. Yeah, just the second winner point. You can adapt this any way you want. Oh yeah, there we go. Love it. All right, hold your balls. That was excellent. So that game is always fun. Yes? Yeah, we'll get into that. That's coming in this segment. A good question by Rod was the serve, and that's really, when we worked on the basic ground strokes, that's pretty much a serve, except for you're going to be back here doing it. But we'll talk about that diagonal serve and everything. Let's work on our hand speed again. We're going to go blocks this time. But you're trying to get, with this advanced group, we would do 10 in a row before you can attack. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good shot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we can try to win it. And then you would try to be aggressive and win. So let's go ahead and do 1 point like that. Michael, you do better than I do, so you get in there. Here you go. Get your 10 in a row. Here you go. All right. Good. Wow. Some great rallies over there. Excellent. All right. So after that, we worked on our hand speed. Let's work on the back, the ball from the back. This is called the return and run drill. Here's where I would feed the ball in as an instructor. All 4 players are back. Now, the only reason I start all 4 players back, just so you get more practice on the transition. You guys are the receiving team. This is the serving team. They're going to have to wait for the ball to bounce before you can counterattack and try to come in. So if Armando is being fed the ball, he would hit his return, and then we would come in together making sure that we're balanced for the next shot. And here's where I would feed it. So I'm going to feed it here, and this is how I do this drill. One of the favorite ones. You're in right here. So here's the drill. So I'll feed it. You hit it and come in together, you two. Come on in. Play it out. All right, we'll do it again. And that was an advanced shot there, trying to do a third shot drop. All right, let's do one more. Just drive this one, guys. Go ahead and drive it. Yeah, drive it. There we go. At this point, with this level of intermediate players, they're probably going to be prone to driving the ball versus dropping the ball. We haven't gotten into that. That's going to be an introduction. I call that shot the work in progress because I'm still working on my third shot drop. I'd like to make it 100% of the time, and that's not happening. So that's something I continue to work on. So the return and run drill. Now at this point, we would introduce the third shot drop. And here's how we would do it. We would do it, I call it the slinky drill. So come on up for a second. And I'm going to have you take a step back each time you hit the ball, but you have to make the ball land in the kitchen. So go back a little further. And again, making that ball land in the kitchen. It's making it look too easy. Good, again, all the way. Yep. Until they're all the way at the baseline. Look at that shot. And now you start working your way back in. You walk your way back in. This drill is not easy. You made that look extremely easy. And then you start walking in, and then I start going back. And I start working on my third shot. Right. So come all the way up. Yep. Feed me a deeper one if you can. There you go. So that's the slinky drill, and that's the start of that third shot drop. Then I would do this drill again, the drive, the return and run drill, seeing if there's an appropriate time to try to add the third shot drop versus the drive. Okay? Let's go ahead and do the slinky drill. So everyone up on that non-volley line, and we'll work our way back. One side moves back. And at this point, I'd be walking around, thanks. I'd be walking around helping everybody. All right, that's good. Hold your ball. Come on back up. Excellent. Thank you. Great demonstration. All right. Now, I would start talking about point play. This is where we would start playing some points out. Remember, these are condensed, these drills. I would usually do out of an hour lesson 2 drills, maybe 3, and then leave the last 20 to 15 to 20 minutes for play. But what we would do is during the play, we would talk about some of the skills we learned, and maybe they should have been implemented in that point, or they were implemented, and we would highlight that. Whether it's a dink, an angle dink, opening up the middle and going for the middle, we would highlight whatever skills we had practiced. But I want them to play because it's just too much fun not to play pickleball, right? So now at the intermediate level, we'd start talking about where to serve. So Armando, so if I'm going to serve, I want to make sure I'm trying to go deep and to the backhand if possible, right? The power of the serve. You got to get it in because you only have one chance, and you don't want to take too big a risk. But if you don't take any risks at all, then you're not giving yourself a fighting chance. So definitely aim for that middle and deep if possible, or elevation where you change the elevation of the ball. You see the pros do that sometimes. And then sometimes there's the tricky one where you just go soft enough that it makes it over the kitchen line, because they start backing way up for your shot. They're back here. Makes it difficult to get the really short one. So you can start to experiment with your students with that. I'd have them serve and I'd have targets. I would usually I put a strip of tape or cones to make sure they're going deep with the serve. Deep is very important. Get that serve deep. Okay, another question I had, somebody asked, how do I beat a banger somebody that speeds it up every time. And that's where that block volley comes in. So back up and just go ahead and drive this ball at me. So having that block volley enables me to defend myself, soften it up if I need to. So if I'm really getting driven at, whoa, that was really good. Save that one. If I'm really getting driven at, maybe I hit a softer, one more. I hit a softer. I hit a softer ball to bring them in. And then once we get in, now we start that angle dinking, right? We start working with our soft game. Usually people that just have one speed don't like to get engaged in an angle dink or a straight ahead dink. They want to keep hitting the ball hard. And if they try to hit it hard from up here and you've done your job and they lift it up, you can counter that. So that skill of hitting the ball soft is more difficult than hitting the ball hard, right? That's one thing that you got to look at. All right, and then for the final segment, does anyone want to relieve their paddle? We're going to do a couple new skills. Does anyone else want to come in, or you guys are all good? All right, we'll keep these guys where they are. So let's start talking about our volley. And we'll start talking about not our block, but our flick volley. I saw a few people do that where you're adding spin, right? So if we get a ball that's below the net, if it's below the net, try it here. You can speed that up by adding a little bit of spin to it and the flick. Now here's where I might work a little bit more on technique with my students and work on making sure the paddle face is below the ball and finishes slightly above. One thing you don't want to do is finish like this, because the next ball is going to hit you right in the chest. So we want to make sure that it's a short, compact shot, whether it's on the forehand flick. Oops. Go ahead and feed me a forehand. Where it's a forehand flick, where you're flicking this way or you're flicking this way. All right. Now here's where I would have them be competitive again and start to rally and work with their flick. So let's go ahead and do that with your partner. See if you can go ahead and work a little bit on the flick volley. Go ahead. Again, you're talking about highly skilled players. What's that now? No, it bounces, yeah. You can go in there if it bounces. There you go. All right, that's good. That's good. Now, for the advanced players, we're going to talk about defending the transition zone or resetting the ball. The worst place to get caught, similar to tennis, is standing in no man's land. So sometimes during the transition, when I'm returning and going in, all of a sudden the ball comes back faster than I anticipate, and I have to defend myself from the non-volley, the transition zone. So Armando, would you guys come on up? Right there is good. And here's where I would feed, and you guys are back. And I would feed, and I would try to put a ball right at his feet, so they had to take and transition like that. That would be another drill I would do, where I purposely put it right at their feet, make it difficult for them. Then the next level is have you guys come in a transition zone. Everyone's in the transition zone. I would feed from here. Your job is to reset the ball in front of them, and then you guys can counter and then come in. All right, so ready? And then we play it out. And that would be again a higher level advanced drill where you would be doing resets from the transition zone. Continue to work on your third shot drop. I think it's something that you gotta, the tour players work on it. Annalie Waters, Ben Johns, those guys, they're still working on it. Well, we start talking about what type of spin you want to use. I know I played a bunch with Bill Anderson, and he's got one of the best third shot drops. Come on up for a second. And he always rolls the ball, better than that. He always rolls the ball and gets that ball to dip, which is very difficult to keep low because it's going to be a pop-up and then there's an attack off of that. The other is a slice third shot. So if it comes to my backhand I'm typically going to hit a slice third shot versus a roll. I'll roll my forehand, but I'll slice my backhand. I don't think there's anyone on tour even, maybe Ben Johns, I've seen him do once, where they roll that backhand third shot dink. Mostly, if it's a two-handed backhand, you can do it a little easier than a one. Unfortunately, I grew up with old school in the 70s, so I'm a one-hander. I don't have that skill. But that seems to happen a little bit more with two hands versus one. Backhands are usually sliced. All right, and then at this point, we would start to talk about point play and strategy. Here's where we start talking about stacking, right? Let's say I really like playing this side, but I'm supposed to be on this side, and my partner is serving. I would stay on the same side, and we would switch, so that I would stay on my stronger side, he would go to his stronger side. That would be a stacking situation. You can even do that when you're returning serve as well. If again, you're returning, and I like this side, I would stay here, you would return, I would slide over, and then we would take our preferred side. Similar to the I formation or Australian in tennis. If you have a strength and you like to play that side, you can certainly switch. All right? One other thing that would be crashing and attacking the non-volley line. So a lot of times if, Armando, you guys come on up, and you're going to be the attacker. So if I get a shot, come all the way up, and we're back and I drive this ball, you're going to crash and see if you can attack that with a poach. You're going to poach on this. Ready? So my partner's going to try to come in and poach. If he sees that I've hit a good drive and the ball's going to be lifted and I'm watching, I'm going to come in, see if I can cut across and take it, much like a tennis poach, right? And then we would switch. That's probably the most devastating attack you could do in pickleball. All right. How do I make less mistakes? Right? Hear it all the time. Tennis, you hear, how do I make less mistakes? How do I make less mistakes? I always talk about the dimensions of the pickleball court, that it's skinny and long, right? It's 44 feet long, 20 feet wide. So if you do those in percentages, it's a much narrower court than a tennis court is. So what you want to try to do is aim down the middle. And I say it 1,000 times in the lesson. Nobody should be aiming the ball from here to here. Everything should be from the outside hip to the outside hip, down the center, unless you have a ball that you can dink for an angle. So everything down the middle. That'll prevent a lot of errors. The other is footwork. If you're reaching for balls still, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And again, focus. Most of the time we miss because we're not hitting the ball in the center, right? The final thing is, how do I make money out of all this, right? What do I do to get these lessons going? Just like in tennis. Private, I do privates, semi-privates, 3 and me, which is the most popular because you're able to control the shot just like in tennis. 4 plus me, where I'm on the side feeding in, working on instruction. You can do drills up to 6 on one court. People rotate in. It's not that difficult, just like you would do with a group tennis lesson. Do camps, 2-day camps. I used to do a lot with Mark Price, pickleball player Mark Price, not the basketball player Mark Price, where he does a 2 or a 3-day camp. Did a couple with Jeff Brown up in Nashville, some down with Frank Salerno down on St. Simons. So you can set those camps up the way you want, whether it's a 2-day, a 3-day, or even a 1-day long camp, which we've done at Sugarloaf, where we had a 3-hour camp on a Saturday. The other is tournaments. You can run tournaments. You can do clinics where it's a drop-in. You can have Pickleball 101, just like you have Tennis 101, where people drop in and schedule. I'm going to open it up to questions now. Anybody have any questions as far as the drills? I mean, some of you don't have as much knowledge about pickleball. One question was, you have to let it bounce before you go in here. You do have to let it bounce to hit the ball from in there, but if we're dinking, go ahead and just dink it soft. I can stand in here provided I'm letting the ball bounce. This is not a smart place to be, but I can do this. This is legal. What I couldn't do, hit it a little harder, what I couldn't do is volley it from here. Now I'm violating. You also, if you volley from here, you cannot fall into the kitchen. You must have your momentum where if I'm reaching too far in and I step in, get a lot of tennis players that, you know, their volley in tennis is like this. All of a sudden I see them, they'll step in and try to volley. And they go, I wasn't in the kitchen. So that's something that's a common mistake. Any other questions? Any questions for me? Yes? What's the life of a pickleball? That's a good question. If you're indoors, like this is, I think those balls are going to last forever. If you're outside, like it's the last couple of days, I've been coaching at 9 o'clock and it was a little chilly, we had quite a few cracked balls. So if it gets super cold, those balls can get brittle and crack. You want to make sure you're using a good outdoor ball. A good outdoor ball. We use core pickleball, which seems to be a good blend of playability and durability, and they don't crack as often. A lot of the Duras and Franklins and stuff, they'll crack pretty quick in the cold weather. An indoor ball has bigger holes. Outdoor ball has smaller holes. All right? Just so that's a big difference you can tell. It's also softer. Look how much softer this is. This ball is really hard. It hits like a brick. One interesting thing about pickleball, the noise, right? It's a noisy game, especially indoors. That's why it's been resisted in a lot of subdivisions. People don't want that. Different cities are banning pickleball because of the noise. But they are coming up with new technology. There's a new paddle called the OWL, O-W-L, like hoo, that owl, and it reduces the noise 50%. So I can't remember what the decibels are now, but it lowers the decimals to half. And I think they're going to try to come up with a quieter ball. So I think once the industry comes up with more friendly, less noise pickleball equipment, it's going to be more widely accepted. Right now it's widely accepted, that's for sure. Any?
Best tape.
What's the best tape? That's a good question. We use painter's tape. It's a bit more expensive, but it lasts through whatever event you're doing. When I do mixers, certainly I do one a month. We only have 2 dedicated courts. We have 4 permanently lined courts, and then if we go beyond that, we'll put tape down. And we'll.
Even for outdoor and indoor? I know, like, you know, there's some of the humidity outside kind of affects how well it sticks to the court.
Certainly temperature has a big factor, and moisture. If it's wet, you can't put any tape down. Usually it's difficult. If it's super cold, it doesn't stick either. So that could be problematic. But as far as tearing, like, you know, if you're on the line and you slide, painter's tape seems to hold up pretty good. I would say this masking tape would be destroyed with you guys playing on it aggressively and moving through the lines probably. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much, guys. Thanks for